everyone. We are live for the 5th episode of Burning Subjects, featuring the Cylinder Cox Discord server once again. If I can.
And this time, I'm literally the only cylinder cock here.
Apparently, for some reason.
Because you two are only part of the Gmod locomotive works.
Yes.
As in members in my server who happen to build locomotives and carriage mod.
Yes.
Right.
But in this episode of Burning Subjects, we're going to be talking about scrapped excursion stars, whether they were scrapped permanently a long time ago or are still around today, but in bits. We're going to be talking about some of those, what their fate was, and what their fate could have been today if they were still around.
Yes.
Like take instance one of Jim's videos on an episode of local profiling where he took a example of a Allegheny and remodeled it as a passenger locomotive.
Yes.
Basically taking the smoke box air compressors, instead of taking them from the front, he put them a little bit inside the smoke box. Into the sides, yes. Oh, here's Steven! Steven is joined!
Every time you said that, every time someone joins, I would be fucking rich.
Anyway, Steven, welcome to episode 5 of Burning Subjects.
Yes.
Scrapped excursion locomotives. They can be both permanently scrapped or temporarily scrapped, as in, dismantled with long-term plans to have the engines running or at least put back together.
Yes. Like
as in a certain green connie that you nut over.
Yeah. Yes.
Either way, so let's start off with some of the more underrated and work our way to the uprated. So let's start with a cab forward, shall we say?
Southern Pacific, number 4274.
Yep, which was the last steam-powered passenger train to ever go over Donner Pass. Which is a 4882 cab forward type
locomotive.
Put it
bluntly, it's a Yellowstone running in reverse.
Basically.
And of course, if you flip it over or if you flip it around, it has the monkey deck.
Well, as they're called, apparently.
Yeah, that's basically the name for the platform behind between the smoke box and the tender, where hobos would hop on to catch a ride. Not a good idea. They would get deaf. It's very, really fucking dirty.
And, well, to say the least.
I wonder if, now if it was like if they were on 1522's front or 425's, they'd probably go deaf, more quickly. I don't even know. I don't know how the stack talk of the cab forwards work. But you've heard the stack talk of those two engines, right? They can practically drown out the whistle.
I mean, speaking of loud locomotives, have you guys seen recently about the 2102?
No.
Oh, well, she's starting to look like herself again.
Yes, and I hope that sometime when the restoration is finished, I plan to go back to Jim Thorpe and catch it in action. Because I saw 425 this year.
Yes. But Michael, to be honest, you will be very lucky to see our T1 in action. Very lucky.
Anyway, 4274.
Yes, back.
Yes.
What we were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Holds distinction for pulling the last steam-powered passenger train over Donner Pass.
But
from Sacramento, California to Reno, Nevada, and return.
Yes.
Some point, I want to say in November or something of 1957.
And well, to be honest, I think that
the engine got dismantled for scrap in 1959
of April.
And to be honest, the locomotive, this particular one, I feel like is one of the more underrated. I mean, yes, it's ugly. And yes, today it would probably not operate because 1, it's huge, 2, it's a cab forward, and 3, well, What 3? What was I gonna say? Crap.
It's expensive as shit.
Yeah, but either way, and a lot of people, because of the 4274, they talk about a certain other, a certain Soul Survivor.
94.
Yeah, which we talked about recently. Well, in a top 15 list. And
Locomotive that haven't operated in the preservation era, and that's in some cases never will.
yeah.
You're welcome.
But to say the least, the fact that that was the last cab four that ever operated over those sort of big trains, that's a good reason to mention it. Since, well, cab forwards are pretty underrated, even though I really don't like them either. It was just a good thing to
I
mention
don't
them.
like them, but I don't hate them. I think they're quirky.
Yeah.
How about not great, not terrible? You could say that.
So just
3.6.
like
I like the way you're thinking, Comrade Steven. A little bit of Chernobyl for everyone.
just like a middle ground for steam locomotive love.
Yeah.
But next, let's go on to a yes, the two locomotives that we constantly press F in the chat for because, well, whoever used to own them.
Oh, them.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of overrated, though.
They're overrated, but they're also they're respectable. Well,
2156.
and 21. Well, not 2156. That one.
Of course, that hasn't been used on an excursion.
Oh, wait, you're talking about 2177.
I'm talking about
2174.
no.
No, I thought you were talking about those other two Jensen locomotives.
Yes, those are the Jensen. We're going to be talking about the Jensen.
The Jensen locomotives.
So let's start with the smallest.
9 and 5632.
Ironically, we're both 5600s, sort of.
Very different. Just very different.
Very different. Very different.
And yes, we are perfectly aware that there's a surviving GTW Pacific and a surviving Burlington Route Northern with opposite road numbers.
Yes, but I mean that's actually why we mentioned.
If you're brave and stupid enough, you can try to buy both of them, have them completely refurbished, operating condition, and again, only if you're stupid enough, permanently swap road numbers. I wouldn't mind it, but some people will probably want to bludgeon you to death for it.
But to say the least, we mentioned only one of those locomotives on the top 15. But we're going to be talking about both of them, and we're also going to be talking about Richard Jensen in this for a little bit. You know, about what he did. But to say the least,
I believe a really big dipstick. That's what he is.
Yeah. To say the
No, we're
least,
just going to call him a dick.
Dick Stip.
No, just a dick.
But, well, either way, let's start with the
You
smallest.
guys that's the funny kind of means.
Let's start with this.
Dickard. You know, Richard and Dick. Like, nobody says Dickard.
Well, let's start with the smallest locomotive, 5629, which Bachmann has made a tribute to by making a model of it, since, you know. Yeah, either way. 5629 is a 462 Pacific locomotive built for the Grand Trunk Western. And what time was it?
February of 1924.
It was mainly used for fast passenger and mail service until, of course, the retirement of most steam locomotives. But Richard Jensen bought the locomotive for short excursions. And
at one point, he had the engine fitted out with a larger tender.
Yes, which...
and he also had the locomotive pull a circus train, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So the 5629 had quite a memorable career for its short time. But here's the most memorable... Well, here's what 5629 is mostly remembered for. After its excursion.
Well, in the late 1970s, apparently, Jensen got he kind of got exiled from his storage location in Chicago or something, and in the late 70s. By the way, he was also injured from a freak accident. So he.
In other words, he got broke his back well left in the fridge, I believe.
I don't know, but anyway, he got the 5629 moved to the Burr Oak Yard from the Rock Island Railroad in Blue Island, Illinois, and they were on the verge of bankruptcy. And in March of 1980, the Rock Island was gone for good, and the Burr Oak Yard, where the 5629 was located, was bought by Metra, which I believe is a passenger railroad that operates in the state of Illinois, right?
Commuter train service in Illinois. And they got double-decker coaches, by the way.
Yeah, but again, they operate predominantly in Illinois as a commuter passenger operation.
Which, to be fair, they are, I guess, allowing steam engines to operate on their tracks.
Steven.
Okay, I will let you talk.
As I'm trying to say, but yeah, then at some point, as the 1980s slowly dragged on, Metra became increasingly irritated about the presence of the 5629. In fact, they actually wanted to build I believe, a 2-track car body car shop where the locomotive stood. But they wanted Jensen to move the locomotive away. But Metra wouldn't offer any assistance. Okay? A little bit of a dick move, but I can totally understand them wanting to have the locomotive removed from the yard. And, yeah. So, but then I think for some reason, Jensen decided to do the exact opposite. And I believe he actually went through several measures to make sure that the locomotive couldn't be moved at all. At least, I think. Yeah, it couldn't even move on its own wheels anymore. Several groups actually tried to step in and move the locomotive free of charge, including the Illinois Railway Museum, but
nothing worked.
Nothing worked. Metra finally had enough, and they contacted the Urban Howell division of the Luria Brothers Scrap Company. And so in July of 1987, the 5629 was broken up for scrap. But you want to know the real dirty truth? I know that a lot of people won't believe me, but at the end of the day, it was Jensen's fault. Because I think that he was the one who went through the measures of making sure that the locomotive couldn't be moved. And in fact, during some kind of enthusiast meeting, shortly before the engine got cut up, and someone asked him what the fate is of the 5629, and Jensen quite calmly and shockingly said, "Yeah, we're going to let her get cut up." Because by this point, he was no longer the kind of guy who was interested in making money by running steam locomotives on excursion trains. No, he was all about winning lawsuits because he got $1 million following the lawsuit of the scrapping of the 5632. That was more so a freak accident. But when it comes to the 5629, that's Jensen's own fucking ego. I'm sorry, but Richard Jensen is the true culprit. So to all those little foamers out there who are saying that Metra is guilty and who are hating on Metra for calling it a scrap company, like what? Over 30 years ago, just to get rid of a locomotive where they wanted to build a friggin', a building that they wanted to have? Screw you kids. Like, seriously, grow the fuck up.
Unfortunately, I was actually in those shoes, in those kids' shoes at one point.
At one point.
Now I've grown out of them.
Yeah, but even
and besides, never mind. As I was saying, Metra is actually lenient towards steam engines, running on their tracks, like 765 ran there.
I think they even got I think they might have even gotten the 4014 on there at some point during its 2019 trip. But yeah, again, Might have been, because I think it was in Chicago for a little bit during its tour of the Midwest last year. But I guess that the only major saving grace about the scrapping of the 5629 was that Jensen wasn't able to get any money because he lost the lawsuit.
Ha!
Yeah. But even though we lost 5629, at least we still have 5030 and 5632. Yes, there was another one besides 5632, 5030.
Really?
I'm pretty sure that's a different class. After all, it's a 5,000 class, and then there's a those are 5600s.
Maybe they got so many Pacific they were able to consistently keep numbering them in a straight continuously, without skipping a number or something. But I don't know. I'm not an expert on Grand Trunk Western Steam.
Mm-hmm.
They say it's the American Canadian National.
Canadian 6325 is better though, to me, honestly.
True.
Anyway, shall we talk about the world's largest brass model then?
Ah, yes. Which I actually.
Jensen's other long lost locomotive, Burlington Route 5632.
Yes.
Which I doubt he operated, by the way.
Well, he didn't actually. He didn't operate it. The Burlington Steam Program did, but the locomotive was sold to Richard Jensen after Harry C. Murphy retired, and
Lewis Meigs succeeded him.
And
I think I already kind of explained that story before.
Yeah,
when we were in your
my top 15 list.
Locomotives that haven't operated in the preservation era.
We were mainly explaining the 5632 because 5629 is still around, which I have seen in person.
The Burlington Route Northern, not the GTW Pacific that Jensen helped on its way into oblivion.
Yeah.
But for those of you who wondered why the Burlington Route 5632 got torched, in case for some reason you didn't watch that episode, well, it also had to be removed from Jensen's old storage location in Chicago. But unfortunately, basically, he had to move the locomotive to a Chicago scrapyard for storage. But unfortunately, it derailed on a switch, I believe, as it was entering the yard. And unfortunately, the people who worked in the scrapyard couldn't put the locomotive back on the rails. They had no way of re-railing the engine. That's why the 5632 got torched. I'm willing to bet that the scrapyard workers didn't want to cut the locomotive up.
I bet anyway.
Let me put it this way: if they had the means of re-railing it, and if only the tender had derailed, I'm positive that they would have torched the tender, but left the locomotive alone.
To be honest, I bet there were a couple people there who just started tearing up as they saw the locomotive get cut up.
But I think it was even more. But I think more people were just tearing up as the 5629 got torched.
Especially foamers.
Like, once again, the GTW 5629. It's gone because Jensen was an asshole. Burlington Route 5632. It was gone because of a horrible case of bad luck.
Yeah. So, but well, now that I've seen one of 5632's sisters in person, I realized that I would have hated to see that engine being cut up. It's a beautiful Northern, and to be honest, I would have loved to see that engine running.
Yeah. Also, a fairly interesting Mars light setup, I guess. And this is coming from someone who doesn't really like separately applied Mars lights on steam engines. But they kind of look like little lights like you would see on a diesel locomotive.
It looks more like a signal. The signal lights.
Yeah, or if the red bulb was above the white bulb, It actually kind of looks like one of the, like a smaller version of the pedestrian traffic lights we have here in my hometown. I kid you not. But anyway, what is the next engine on that you wanted to talk about? There,
Oh,
Andreas?
Steven, this is where you take your call. We're gonna be, since this one's technically not scrapped, but you know it's in bits.
Dismantle.
Steven,
Yes.
you're gonna be your favorite Connie, which recently I actually met someone who used to fire the 722 back when it was in service. That is.
Hi, yes, the 722. It took the top spot on my top 20 retired Team Excursion Stars list, and it practically trumped the 1218.
Pretty much pissed off Jimmy.
Thank you. But anyway, as I said in my top 20 retired Team Excursion Stars list, 722 was built in 1904 by the notorious Baldwin Locomotive Works. It worked on the Southern Railway's Murphy branch until like 1953. Mainly it was like freight trains and logging trains. Like 1952, 1953, like somewhere in the early 50s is when it was retired. And it was eventually given to the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad, which would eventually spawn, I guess, the Tweetsie Railroad, because, you know, the number 12 10-wheeler operates at Tweetsie. But 722 was sold along with 630.
Which
they were
still
both
operates
renumbered.
today.
630 was renumbered to 207, and 722 was renumbered to 208. They operated, you know, basic short line freight operations and stuff. Their tenders were actually modified with smaller coal bunkers to help with extra visibility during reverse operations and, you know, switching operations and all that. And they operated there all the way up until 1967, 1968, when they were both acquired back by the Southern. And, you know, 630 was restored to operation like 68, 69.
Nice.
And 722 was, it had a few firebox repairs needed, and it entered excursion service in 1970. And out of the three main stars, if you don't count, well, not counting Savannah Atlanta 750, because that's not originally a Southern Railway locomotive. It was actually originally from the Florida East Coast. But 4501, 630, and 722, out of the three, 722 is the last one to carry excursion service. And it's a little bit, I guess, unique because it dons the same crescent green color that 4501 has, or had, I should say, back in that day. And the engine, well, I mean, it did have a good excursion life on the Southern for a while, but I believe in 1979, it was actually leased to the Wilmington and Western Railroad. It operated there for a short amount of time, probably a few months or something like that. I mean, that was when they still had the 425, I believe. And I know that because I've seen a picture of it on the Wilmington and Western with 425. And that 58 switcher. And and then in 1980, because of the fact that, you know, the Connies were just not strong enough to handle longer passenger trains, it was leased to the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, this is actually where it concluded its excursion career, or it's the last place that it operated anywhere. Because, you know, they had more, well, they needed bigger powered locomotives. Although, the weird thing is, I've actually seen videos of 722 with one of the three superpower locomotives. Actually, two of the three superpower locomotives. I've seen like a picture of 722 next to the Royal Hudson 2839, and I've also seen a video with it next to 610. I think it might have double-headed with the engine a few times. But after that, like 1980, like it was just not part of the excursion, roster, the mainline excursion roster at that point. Like it was, just the 2839, Texas and Pacific 610, and Chesapeake and Ohio 2716. And 722 made its final run in 1985. That was when its boiler certificate finally expired, and it is also, not only is it the last out of the 3 Southern Steam Stars to enter service, but it is the last. Well, actually, it's the first one to be taken out of service, and basically, it remained on display at the at TBR at the museum until 1992, when Norfolk Southern, who still owned the engine for some odd reason. I really don't know why they owned it, because they didn't need it anymore. But the engine was on display in Asheville, North Carolina. Until 1999, it was sold to the Great Smoky Mountains Railroad in Bryson City, North Carolina. And they planned to rebuild the engine as a running mate to, 1702, who I've actually seen in person.
Which, sadly, didn't happen.
Obviously, because of lack of funding, like they just, were too. All right, let's restore this fucker. And then when they disassemble it, they're like, oh shit, we got no funds, and now it's just sitting in the yard, or just it's sitting outside of the shops, all like just parts all over the place. The boiler's separated from the frame, and the tender's far away from the engine itself. And I mean, it's not a good sight to see. I mean,
to say the least, this is if there's any steam locomotive fans who ever got to see 722 in action, cherish what you saw, because there are plans to rebuild the 722 to operation. Oh yeah, might be rebuilt to burn oil and might be painted black, but cherish the moment you had with 722 while it was still a good engine. Well, it was still at the peak of its time. Well, it was still a great excursion star that we can remember as what I like to call. Sometimes I like to call it the Emerald Knight, even though it's a Lego set. It's a beautiful engine.
Shit, what was I gonna say? I mean, I don't know. Like, speaking of, like, I was obsessed with 722 at one point. Like, back in 2017, 2018, I wanted the engine to return so badly that it wasn't even it was so annoying. Like a lot of people were telling me, hey, I don't think this thing's ever going to run again, or it's just not going to happen anytime soon. And I was just overly an optimist, and I wanted them to, restore the engine and all that stuff. I mean,
yeah, but
speaking of which, let's talk about another number 1 engine that disguised as a extinct certain Challenger.
Oh yes, our next scrapped excursion star, which actually is like fully scrapped. This one is a Challenger, which we actually have talked before in the second episode.
Oh yeah, UP 3967.
Yes. Unfortunately, I missed that discussion about the 3967 because I only showed up for 15 minutes of the podcast in episode 2.
But
Built in 1942, one of the Jabulon Challengers, so the last new steam locomotives designed and built for the Union Pacific. In May of 1953, it got the honor of pulling the very first excursion on the Union Pacific when the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club decided to sponsor a special passenger train from Denver, Colorado to Laramie, Wyoming and return. I believe the trip went up. I don't know if Track 3 was completed over Sherman Hill back then, but I don't know if they went over the old double track mainline or over the Harriman Cutoff. But needless to say, they went over Sherman Hill, that's for sure. But yeah, unfortunately, the locomotive, the reason why the 3967 got chosen was because it was apparently one of the favorite locomotives of one of the higher ranking people of the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club. And unfortunately, they didn't preserve it. Union Pacific just torched it without any real settlement in the early 1960s.
They didn't really care about that. They just wanted to replace all steam with fucking, diseasels.
They didn't.
Except for the 844 odd.
They really didn't think at that time. But of course, now they're regretting.
Pretty much very few railway
Some of it.
factors.
Then in 1993 and 2003, for the 40th and 50th anniversaries of these of that first excursion, they decided to take good old 3985, and well, they temporarily renumbered it and then fitted it out with the smoke deflectors that the 3967 had at the time that apparently weren't that big of a hit on the Challengers because they were tilted slightly inwards. So even though they might have worked with lifting the smoke, they actually hampered visibility a little bit.
It was worse it would have been worse on the big boys, although there was one that was fitted with smoke deflectors.
What?
Yeah, in 2019, it didn't. It didn't really work.
4019. 4019 was fitted with smoke deflectors?
Yes, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't. I didn't even think that any of the big boys would have been fitted with smoke deflectors. That sounds awful.
Oh.
That sounds awful, mate.
Yeah, now I think about it, I don't think 4014 would look good in that, even if he wanted it to disguise as 4019 sometime.
Oh no, imagine 4014 in the Greyhound livery.
Oh, don't bring that up
Get
now.
the cross. Get the cross.
Where is
Also,
it? Where
look
is
in
it?
your server's US locomotive channel. Here you can see the 4019 with the deflectors.
Oh, it doesn't look as bad as I thought it would. No, it
Okay.
does.
Now, shall we downsize it a little bit and talk about a currently dismantled nickel plate buoy?
Yes,
Mikado.
current. Yes,
Oh,
nickel plate
yes.
587, which is a quite
Good old
a,
587.
or as I like to call it, the
Everybody's talking
Fulmer
about this, and
Express.
so much in the rail fan community.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. But
The
you may
Fulmer
continue.
Express. That's what I like to call it. Fulmer Express. Alright, anyway. Who wants to talk
Yeah.
about the 587?
Little Mikado.
Yes. I guess I'll start then.
Yeah, because I don't know that much about it.
Oh, okay. So, well, the 587 is a 282 Mikado built by Alco in the late 20s, and well, it was built for freight trains and sometimes passenger trains, and it was originally numbered, I'm pretty sure 15 something, I forgot, but then it was renumbered to. But then, of course, it joined the nickel plate, which is a short abbreviation for the
New York,
the
Chicago, and St.
Louis Railroad.
That's the full name of the nickel plate.
Yes, and that was when the locomotive was renumbered to 587. Now, wait.
It was initially built as Lake Erie and Western number 5541, apparently.
Yes,
That's
but before we continue, it is important to note that in the locomotive was fitted with Lima Locomotive Works cylinder castings during an overhaul at some point. Just to note that. And it was also replaced. Its tender was also replaced with another nickel plate Mikado. I think it was 560. Oh yeah, 639. That's the tender it got replaced with. And then after that, the locomotive was put on display after, of course, it was given the last overhaul of a nickel plate locomotive. Well, no, it wasn't. That's 759.
that was 759.
Yeah, either way.
In the Connaught shops in Conneaut, Ohio.
Yeah, but either way, after that, it was put on display at a park, of course, which, they thought it was a pretty proud monument until, of course, it was taken up for restoration after the city wanted to build a library directly where the 587 stood. And so an organization known as Friends of 587 was formed to restore the locomotive to operation. And, well, to be honest, I think that it was kind of rare. I've never really seen a steam engine actually fully operate under a compressed air. Because that's how they fired it up the first time. Well, that's how they moved it out of the shop for the first time. They used compressed air they filled the entire boiler with compressed air, and it actually worked. Which, to be honest, I think that's kind of cool. But either way, after 5 years of labor to restore the nickel plate survivor, it paid off. And well, for the rest of most of its career, it pulled the Indiana Transportation Museum's fare train, and even attended some of the world's fairs, and even operated in the Norfolk Southern Steam program. And it was also featured in its own movie, which is also known as Old 587: The Great Train Robbery, which is a children's movie where a bunch of kids find the 587 in a scrapyard, and well, with the help of the engine's old engineer, they steal the locomotive from the scrapyard and donate the locomotive to a museum.
But it doesn't operate at said museum. What is the museum's name?
The Indiana Transportation Museum.
Oh, so literally the same thing as in real life.
Yeah. But to say the least, one more thing. Well, this is the kind of downfall. It was finally, after 15 years, time finally caught up with the 587. And it was time for her 15-year rebuild, which was the inevitable downfall for this locomotive.
The museum kind of went out of business while the rebuild was still going on.
Yeah.
Or,
to say the least, the restoration slowed to the point where barely anything could be done. And the museum was in serious debt.
On June 28, 2018, the 587 would be saved by a certain group that is restoring the Kanawha.
Yes. And, they are currently storing the 587 with the 2716 in hopes that someday the 2716 and 587 will operate together. But, yeah.
Kanawha goes first. We haven't had a C&O Kanawha in Steam for a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and to be honest, 2716 is the only major Kanawha that has actually operated in the preservation era. I mean, yes, 765 did cosmetically disguise as a Kanawha, but
2765. But
yes, but that doesn't count.
Yeah, if you know what the differences are, you can easily spot them.
Yeah. But anyway,
16 is best Berg. Fight me.
I'm pretty sure the position of the Sand Dome and Steam Dome are different.
Yes, Sand Dome came before the Steam Dome on the Kanawhas.
Yes.
Anyway, next engine.
Next engine. Which one shall it be? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Why don't we talk about a Northern Pacific engine, like 2626?
I don't know about that engine at all.
Northern Pacific 2626. It was used for its farewell to steam excursion.
Oh, speaking of farewell to steam excursions, try guessing what locomotive I'm going to be.
It's going to be 2174, isn't it?
Yep. We're going to take turns on this one. So, Jim, you can start.
We got the.
Why didn't you see that one coming?
Pun intended.
Very much.
Anyway, we're going to take turns on the 2174. So, Jim, you'll go first, then Michael, then Steven, and then last me.
It's the 2174.
Which is the thumbnail for this live stream.
You motherfucking genius. Anyway, it was built in 1948, I want to say. It was one of the Y6Bs, which was the final development of the NNW's Y-class Malays. 30 of them built between 1948 and 1952. The 2174 holds special status because it was used for the farewell to steam excursions on the NNW in July of 1959 between Bluefield and Yeager, West Virginia.
And now, Mike, it is your turn.
Yes, and after, of course, its retirement, the 2174 was almost preserved for scrapped, as a group of railfans were trying to save it. But
You mean it was almost preserved?
Right.
Almost.
But as for the price, the asking price was $10,000, and it was next to impossible. And even to top it all off, the old manager of the scrapyard passed away, and
no, there were rumors that the head of the fundraising had passed away, but that wasn't true. The scrapyard just fell under ownership of that British firm that was, going against what was happening back home. Sorry if I keep hogging
Next,
the spotlight
Stephen.
here.
Next is Stephen.
Hey, it's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine. I like hearing you bash that British firm. What was the name of this British firm, anyway?
I don't even know what the name was of that British firm, but needless to say, they bought the scrapyard and they saw those two big NW steam engines because there was another Y6 melee in there. I believe it was 2143, but they thought, we're going to cut those up. We do not want those preservationists to get their hands on it. We've got to get all that lovely grade. So, yeah, that's why we don't have the preserved 2174 today.
And that's why...
Shady British businessman.
Well,
For whatever reason, British men wanted to buy a scrapyard in Virginia. Why?
Need I remind you that in the United Kingdom at that time, in the 1970s, slowly but surely, steam locomotive preservation was becoming a thing. Locomotives were being bought from the Wooden Brothers scrapyard in Barry in Wales for the scrap value. Why couldn't they just friggin' sell the locomotives for the scrap value? Those preservationists would have been, if they had the money, they would have gladly paid it. It just felt like they had to give steam locomotive preservation the finger just for their own financial benefit, even though people could give them the same financial benefit by just gently asking if they could buy the locomotive and then getting permission to buy it.
And not only that, but I'm pretty sure that they only wanted that money because they're ungrateful bastards that just want to buy stupid, frivolous shit like bloody bananas or, condoms and other shit that you don't need. I mean, what the hell were they going to use that money for anyway?
Well, Steven, maybe they could have used the condoms so that way future generations of those money-hugging bastards would have been prevented.
Oh!
damn!
Now that!
And unfortunately, I did hear somebody wanting to make a full-size replica of a Y6B or a new build of Y6B, but it's literally a new build, 2201.
Yeah. Well, the last Y6B was numbered 2200,
Which I believe,
like I said last time, felt like a bit of a conclusive milestone, for it was not just a nice round number, but the 2200 was also the final mainline steam locomotive manufactured in the United States. As in, when it comes to locomotives that were big enough to actually travel on the main line between major cities on the railroad, the NNW 2200 was the last one to be built in the States. I don't think you should overstep that.
I
and
wonder...
if it was a 2201, I'm pretty sure it would have been another class of engines, like a Y6C or a Y7.
A Y7?
There are blueprints of a Y7, but it's actually a very different kind of 288 locomotive. Like there's a drawing of it, and basically it is a simple articulated locomotive with the air compressor face.
Okay.
Oh, of course.
What's so wrong with that, though?
Well, I'm glad that 433 wasn't the one that pulled that steam excursion.
Yeah. Obviously, the stream won't get to see this, but if you look in the USL of your server, Andrew, that is what the Y7 would have looked like.
Let me see here.
This is not really bad, but the egg versus race.
I'm gonna build that. I'm gonna build that in Gmod.
No, what we need to do is build it to look more like 1218's face. That's what it should be. Or an A-class face.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Come to think of it, it reminds me of that TV rating, TVY7.
I'm gonna build that in Gary's mod.
Anyway, what's next?
Let's see. What is another one that is in bits currently? I want to see if you guys can guess it.
Give us a hint.
I'm not gonna give you a hint, but you guys can probably. It's, to say the least, it's obvious. It's in front of your face.
73751.
No, that one has. Well, it's gonna be returned. It's just going under.
Or is it? Or even when it was out of service, is it largely intact?
Well, when it was out of serve, it's. I'm not gonna put I'm not mentioning 3751 because it's actually pretty close now. So.
Oh. I don't want to say 3985 because the locomotive itself isn't really dismantled.
Yeah.
Read. Oh, I know this one.
What?
Reading Camelback number. No, wait a minute. That 1187. No, that wouldn't be.
It's 1187, but
Reading 1187. Is that the one you were talking about, Andrew?
no, I wanted to mention that one in this, but then again, to be honest, I feel like that would be beating a dead horse.
Yeah.
True.
Go ahead, Andrew. Spoil us.
It is a camelback, though. That's your hint.
Wait,
Is it?
Jersey 774.
You got that right, mate.
I wasn't trying to sound like an Australian or a Britishman, but like a scrubby little New Yorker.
You got that right, mate.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that much of the engine.
It is only one of 2 camelbacks that have ever operated in the preservation area. And the only one that, has operated, well, it hasn't operated currently because, it was scrapped, sadly. But
You mean 774 and 1187 are both the only camelbacks that have operated in the preservation era.
in excursion
And
service.
The 774 is obviously no longer with us.
Yes, sadly, anyway. But anyway,
For those of you who don't know what the fuck a camelback is,
a camelback is basically a locomotive that instead of having its cab on the back next to the firebox, the actual cab for the engineer is in the center of the boiler.
it's literally the boiler because the firebox was thick. Like it was wider than your mama's hips. Basically, they had to make it so fucking wide and round because these locomotives burned slow burning anthracite coal,
I just got a mental picture.
which required a significantly larger firebox because it burned more slowly.
I just got a mental picture and I hate it.
You're welcome.
Shit, what was I saying? Basically, if the firebox if the engine wasn't a camelback and the cab was all the way just around the firebox, it would probably just be a shotgun boiler, a really uncomfortable shotgun boiler.
Well,
Yeah.
imagine. This is the mental picture I got. Imagine if the I-10As were camelbacks. Please, nobody Photoshop that. Please, okay? Just
No, don't worry. I'm just gonna build it in Gmod.
no.
Yes.
No. Yes. Do not build it. Don't.
I will.
Are we going to go back to the 774?
I don't know crap about it.
Same.
But still, we still have Central New Jersey Camelback number 592 at the B&O Railroad Museum.
Same place where
That's a greatly proportionate Atlantic as opposed to a 10-wheeler.
Yeah. And and the weird thing is both CNJ survivors, the 113, which operates on the Blue Mountain in Reading, and the 592, they're not even in the state of New Jersey.
All right.
Check meme channel. I got you the perfect woman to express your hatred for me building the I-10A as a Camelback.
I wonder what other engines we should talk about.
Great. I'm getting ideas that shouldn't exist.
Awesome.
Let's get back to the topic of the video at hand.
Yeah. Because to be honest, I think we've talked about all the engines that we wanted to talk about. So for the next 5 minutes, we can start.
Wait, I think I have an idea.
We got 5 minutes left.
Jim may despise this engine, but I don't give two shits.
What?
Oh no!
It's an excursion star that only ran for 1 year in the mid-80s.
Oh.
Oh yeah. I know which one you mean, of course. A certain immeasurably overrated Pacific.
A 462.
Pennsylvania 1361.
Yes.
Obvious reaction.
Meh.
I just figured I had something else in here. 1361, I believe, was built by the Penzies Juniata shops in 1918. Unsurprisingly, a passenger locomotive. It pulled like the Broadway Limited and other things until its retirement. I don't know when it was retired. I don't remember the year, but it was placed on display on that park in Horseshoe Curve, and it was like 85, I believe. It was taken out of the park. I don't remember the name of the restoration group that restored it.
I got a bad idea.
They replaced basically they put a GP9 diesel, I believe, in place of the 1361. Number 7048 was the number of the diesel. So the engine was designated a state steam locomotive along with 3750, the other survivor, which is at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg. However, it's outside in quite poor condition. But the engine, the 1361, lasted about only a year in excursion service. It started out in excursion service in 1987, and then in 88, it just was placed into another retirement. And the rebuild has taken so long, partially because, basically, I believe the main bearing on the driving axle failed or something like that. I'm not sure what happened, but I believe in '96 it was moved to. I don't want to say its name, but I got you because it's in the script.
Reference
National
National Historic Site. That's a reference to his top 20 video.
Yeah, unfortunately. And unsurprisingly, Steamtown never got the thing running again. They had the thing all the way up until 2013. And, hell, they even tried to rebuild it for a quote-unquote semi-static display, where it would just be enough for it to, drive during, basically low-speed operations, blowing the whistle. That's the operation that we're planning to use with the engine. Maybe for hauling their Scranton Limited excursions or something like that. But, basically it was off of Steamtown property by 2013, and, the boiler was stored at the soon-to-be returning East Broad Top. And I believe the rest of the engine was at the Railroaders Memorial Museum. And as of 2019, 4 people are working on the engine. And my God, it has been quite the length lengthy restoration. Probably not as lengthy as 428 because I don't know how long that thing has been rebuilt. But I mean, who knows? Maybe this will actually be a really actually thorough restoration because I believe the first rebuild of 1361 was quite rushed.
It was a botch job.
Well, I got a bad
Put it
idea.
This way, I kind of want to basically make a comparison of the botch jobs between 1361 and 3985. 1361, 1 year of refurbishing for 1 year of service. 3985, 2 years of refurbishing for nearly 30 years of service. There's no real question which one was the better botch job.
3985.
Okay, we didn't need you to like. We obviously didn't need you to answer the question because Jim already answered it for us.
Yeah.
I got a bad idea though.
Oh shit! What do we got here? A fucking comedian, private joker.
I got a bad idea though.
What?
What if the Pennsylvania had camelbacks?
Funny. The Reading, which had camelbacks, by the way, actually, I believe the Pennsylvania leased, or I believe they leased a couple of Reading T1s at one point.
Oh no! I got another bad idea.
What?
What if the Pennsylvania had cap forwards? Okay, well, I gotta get going from there. So, hope you guys liked this episode of and we ended up on a terrible.
This episode of Burning Subjects is kind of over and well fucked.
And to say the least, this was a.
I tried to end it off with another steam engine, and I did practically the whole thing by myself.
Yeah, and to say the least, that was a Burning Subjects. And to say the least, we ended off on a stupid note. But either way, we will see you guys in the next podcast where we're going to be talking about the top 10 future Steam excursion stars.
Oh yes, this will be a treat. This will be a treat.
So we will see you next time.